Earlier this week, a federal judge also rejected Google's attempts to create the world's biggest digital library. Now, our next guest says that Google's a lot like Microsoft in the 1990s, only worse. And he would know. Gary Reback pushed the Justice Department to launch its massive antitrust suit against Microsoft in 1998. Now he wants the feds to take on Google. Gary Reback, now an attorney at Carrell Ferrell, joins us from Palo Alto. Gary, Google worse than Microsoft, really?
Well, I think you'd have to make that argument, Cory. Google has a bunch of problems Microsoft never had. I mean, we're talking about antitrust here, but remember, they have privacy issues worldwide, and they're under significant scrutiny for appropriating other people's intellectual property, like that judge in New York said. So they've got triple the problems Microsoft ever had.
Problems are one thing, antitrust is another. What makes you think that Google's a monopoly?
Well, I don't know what search engines you use, but I know what search engine most people in the world use. Google's market share is overwhelming, but that really doesn't tell the full story of their market power. By rigging and manipulating their search results, they've been able to expand to all kinds of specialized search. Things like comparison product shopping, for example, and local search. So they're on the verge of dominating most of what we know in web space in terms of search.
During the campaign, Google employees donated twice as much money to President Obama as they did to Hillary Clinton. Eric Schmidt is now a candidate for Secretary of Commerce. How will all of that impact how this plays out?
Well, you know, from the Silicon Valley perspective, Emily, this is very unfortunate. I've had senatorial aides tell me that they feel stymied because the president called out Google as a key innovative company in his State of the Union address. A week before the election, a key Google executive held a fundraiser for President Obama and the Democrats at her home in Silicon Valley. This is causing enormous consternation. We can't help but think that this is inhibiting the Justice Department's freedom to bring this investigation, which everyone knows needs to happen.
So do you think this administration is going to go soft on Google on all of these issues?
Well, nothing's happened so far. I mean, think about it, Emily. I mean, they're under investigation for antitrust violations in Europe. I think there are up to 7 public complaints filed there, and many, many more companies than that have complained privately. The state of Texas has had them under investigation for quite some time. I believe Bloomberg broke a story today that 2 more states may launch investigations, and yet we can't even get our national government to take a look. I mean, nobody's arguing at this stage they ought to throw Google in jail, but not to conduct an investigation at all, I mean, that's shameful.
Is there some sort of pernicious behavior that seems particularly egregious to you?
I could give you all kinds of examples, but let me give you one, which is manipulated and rigged search results. You know, the problem here is that there are all kinds of companies in specialized search. Travel search is an example, local search, where you try to get a great restaurant near where you live, comparison shopping. After telling companies that it was going to send traffic their way, Google went into business against them by setting up its own specialized search sites. And it now has started penalizing its competitors, putting their ranking down lower, and at the same time preferencing its own captive content sites by putting them at the top of the search results. So what we get out of that is rigged and biased and manipulated results. Consumers get hurt. Competitors get devastated.
Gary, isn't the pace of innovation such now that, like when it comes to the ITA thing, for example, here you've got some guys at MIT who figured out how to crunch the data coming from the airlines, but couldn't someone else come in and do the same kind of thing? And so therefore, the pace of innovation is so great that monopoly power today could be forgotten tomorrow?
Well, that's certainly possible in some markets, but it's not likely in the search market, Cory. I mean, think about it. People have exited the search market. There have been in effect, total disasters where VCs have funded search companies and they can't break in. So we're left with a situation now where there's really only one big competitor, that's Bing, at least for most of the world. I think there's a search engine in the Czech Republic. And then we're left with a startup in Silicon Valley that makes a good product called Bleco. But you're not going to see any more product entry into search. Investors won't fund new search companies because they know Google has a hammerlock.
Since we have you, Gary, I want to also ask you about AT&T and T-Mobile. The Obama administration is facing one of the biggest telecom mergers ever. How do you think the administration is going to deal with this, and should this be approved?
You know, I'm sorry to say, my guess at this stage is that the administration sleeps through it. We have had, since the breakup of AT&T by the Republicans many years ago, continued consolidation in the telecommunications market. And some of these mergers have been quite significant, and consumer groups and competitors and customers have protested them, yet to no avail. So I hope the administration takes a hard look at this, but I'm not optimistic.
Gary, you got any Mr. Popularity down in Silicon Valley going up against Google? Microsoft was easy. They're all the way up in Seattle.
Well, that is a difference, and that certainly was a difference several years ago. But, you know, so many Silicon Valley startups are impacted by Google's behavior, and so many VCs have their investments at risk because of Google behavior. That's not an issue anymore, Cory.
All right. Well, Gary, thanks a lot. We really appreciate you coming by. It's a fascinating topic. Gary Reback, an attorney at Carrell Ferrell.